This Green Booger's merchandise sales and the Mandalorian movie success is exactly why the worst Star Wars attraction got the update it deserved. Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run opened alongside Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in 2019 with mixed reception. Being able to fly the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy was a solid idea on paper, but its execution didn't resonate with fans of Star Wars as expected. But when the Mandalorian series on Disney Plus wowed audiences from home, it served as a perfect opportunity to go back to the drawing board and make this attraction one of the best Star Wars experiences in the galaxy. And after I wrote every single mission from this new update, the results are in. Is this a worthy Star Wars experience that's even better than something like Rise of the Resistance? No. I mean, the update was very well done, even if it wasn't this insanely amazing update that saved this ride. And that isn't a bad thing. The same great experience before the ride is still just as good. We have a different but still really great experience aboard the Millennium Falcon, and the Mandalorian and Grogu update gave fans an exciting glimpse of the attraction's future. So, let's talk about it. And it would really help me out if you left a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified for future videos. Now, I'm gonna get to why I think the ride isn't this insanely amazing update in a moment, but first, I just have to say that seeing all the people that worked on this update was just really cool to see. Everyone was clapping and cheering. It was just really nice. It felt really special. And I did go on the very first day that this ride reopened, and getting to see and feel that energy, it got me pretty hyped to see what this new ride was gonna be. And in fact, I saw the Mandalorian and Grogu movie a day early in anticipation for the ride. So yeah, to say I was really hyped for this would definitely be an understatement. But no matter what, I had to curb my expectations a little, not keep them too high, not keep them too low, because after all, it was gonna still be the same attraction, but the idea of having new missions was really fun and exciting. So the queue and the facade, they're exactly the same as they were before. I was anticipating that, no changes, no nothing. And honestly, it's pretty much perfect the way it is. I think that the queue and facade are probably the best in the entire resort, given how immersive it is, how much detail there is. It's just very well done. Now, on to the pre-show itself. It's mostly the same, where Hondo Ohnaka greets us and welcomes us to his transport solutions, and he explains the positions of the ride.
I need flight crews to transport this valuable merchandise across the galaxy. Pilots to navigate, engineers to operate the ship, and gunners to defend the shipments. And that is where you come in.
As before, we see the Millennium Falcon fly in, and we see Chewbacca. His dialogue is slightly tweaked since there is no First Order and there's no Resistance in the Mandalorian timeline, so mentions of that have been removed. But pretty much, it's still the same. And honestly, I don't know how to feel about that. I was a little disappointed and a little confused that we didn't see the Mandalorian or Grogu on those TV screens. It would have helped if there was at least some sort of exposition, some background as to who the Mandalorian is. There is a briefing by Din Djarin himself, but there's still really no explanation on who this character is. In fact, Hondo Ohnaka says it's some Mandalorian will be joining us on our mission.
Some Mandalorian will brief you on your mission.
But it's not the Mandalorian. Now, in the Star Wars universe, I suppose that makes sense that he is just some Mandalorian who's tagging along with us, but we see him for like 10 seconds and then we have to get on the ride. It feels a little sudden, a little random. Now, of course, I know who the Mandalorian is. He's the coolest character to ever exist, but it's best not to assume that the guest knows who this guy is. In fact, some guests may not even know what a Mandalorian is. I think even explaining that he's some sort of bounty hunter, that could have been cool. And I understand this was probably done just in case they want to change up missions in the future, which I'll definitely be talking about that later. It's a small thing that I think was worth mentioning. Now, as far as the ride goes, this is definitely a step up from what was there previously. I think that the original ride was definitely overhated. I've talked about this in my review of the original ride, but essentially, I think the expectations just weren't met after we were promised a lot of things about Millennium Falcon and just Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in general. There were so many promises and things that we were told were gonna happen, and they didn't end up happening. So the promises of random missions and being able to crash our ship beyond repair, none of that was delivered. We just had that one singular mission of Corellia. I think the mission itself was pretty solid, but just having that one singular mission of following that train full of coaxium, it definitely got dull after a while. I don't think it's that good by itself as a Millennium Falcon ride. That's why it wasn't insanely amazing, and that's why I think there really was no other way to go but up with this update. And I'm very happy that the update was better. Now that we have all of this set up, let's get on the ride.
Okay, my friends, chase down those mounties. Engineers, grab crates from their ships. I can sell the crates, and we can split the profits. Go now, and rendezvous with the Mandalorian on Tatooine.
Now instead of learning the controls on Batuu and going pretty slow, we're just immediately jump to lightspeed and we go straight to Tatooine. That is where we have our little tutorial with Din Djarin on how to use the Millennium Falcon, and it's also this time where we're able to test out some new controls. But before we can really figure out everything, of course, little Grogu gets us into trouble.
Grogu, don't touch those buttons. I said don't touch.
Despite the Mandalorian telling him not to press any buttons, he simply doesn't care and touches them anyway. That alerts our targets and they split off into 3 paths, which is when we're told that we can only follow one of our targets. And luckily for me, I was able to run through all 3 of those paths with different riders. The very first path I went on was Bespin, and I gotta say, maybe it was because it was my first time, but it didn't exactly leave the best first impression of what a Millennium Falcon update should be. And that's not to say I didn't like it, because I did like it. But I think maybe it was just a little too linear for me. The linearity makes this one not as exciting, given that we pretty much see our end goal right as soon as we land. I also think our pilots were probably just a little too good and avoided all the obstacles. So later on in the day I did run it back to see if maybe that was the case, and yeah, it didn't really change my mind as much as I thought it would. It's just good. I mean, I think it would have been cooler if we saw the interior from The Empire Strikes Back, that area where we see Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker battling it out, and Darth Vader's like, "I am your father," and Luke screams, "No." That would have been pretty neat. Even if the Millennium Falcon is probably way too big to fit in there. But yeah, overall, it's good. I just think the other 2 missions are just so cool. Speaking of which, the second path I went down was to Coruscant, and I thought that was easily the most fun mission I had. As soon as we land, we get our little briefing from Din Djarin and hear a little bit of Hondo Ohnaka, and then we hear that classic Mos Eisley Cantina theme playing as we track down that bounty. It was just so freaking cool getting to hear that music and getting to ride through all the neon lights and be a part of the hustle and bustle of other ships. It was just pretty cool. In fact, Corellia's nighttime setting was already pretty cool. I think the setting was really well done, that it was mostly nighttime, but Coruscant having all the lights and colors and you got the music, man, I just had this big smile on my face. I'm like, yeah, this is definitely way better than what we had before. And it might be that music. As soon as you hear it, it just gets in your head, gets a big smile on your face. But later on in that mission, when you got electrocuted, it reminded me of the same thing happening in episode 2, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, they also get electrocuted. I thought it was a pretty neat callback. So after getting electrocuted, we get the bounty, then we fall on the floor, and then we jump into hyperspace. So much going on in such a short amount of time. I think that's what I like about this. It was less linear, just more stuff happening, way more stuff to avoid. That's when I went back later in the day and I got the position that's able to control which mission you get, I immediately pressed that Coruscant button. I'm like, we have to do that one again, it was so good. Now the final mission was Endor. Now I only got to do this mission one time, but I thought this was easily the coolest mission. Coruscant's the most fun, but this one's the coolest. I think this one had a lot of debris from the Death Star, which had lots of opportunities to crash your ship, and the setting is just so cool. And despite being able to ride it only one time, the energy in my ship was just so fun when I rode that I left feeling pretty satisfied. You know, I think this is the best part of the ride. Everyone in the ship is basically just playing a big video game, and it feels like you're just on the couch playing a multiplayer game and people are screaming, having a good time. That is what this ride reminds me of, and this is what the ride does the best. Just people having a good time, no matter your score. It's the energy inside this cockpit that makes this ride really fun. Now, after talking about the 3 missions, I have to say that I really love how they improved every single position. In fact, each position feels like it's gonna be so much fun now. It's not just the pilot that's gonna have all the fun or anything. All of them feel pretty great. For the pilot position, you have so much more to avoid, and there's just so much more going on with all of these missions, where before, you really were just behind the train a lot of the time. In fact, when I was the pilot, it was pretty easy to just stick behind the train. It wasn't really challenging, and when you already knew where to go, it kind of got a little boring. So I think this is a huge step up for that position. The gunner position is more fun as well, because instead of just shooting your one blaster over and over and the blaster's kind of slow, you got all these missiles to use at your disposal. The blaster is even faster. It's just way more fun than before. And there's also more things to hit, like say the explosives on Bespin, more ships to shoot down. But of course, the position with the most changes was the engineer. The engineer position is sort of a catch-all now. Just like before, you're still fixing the ship by pressing the buttons on the side of your ship, which also means you have to look away from the action, which is a little unfortunate, but you're really not looking more than like 2 seconds to press the buttons. And instead of pressing a button to shoot a harpoon to latch onto the train, you're now collecting crates for Hondo. And it's not just coaxium either, there's all sorts of things that could be in these crates that you could sell for profit at the very end of the ride. Now, one of the features announced ahead of the update was that we'd be able to babysit Grogu as the engineer. Now, I have to say, and this hurts me because Grogu is really awesome. He's cool, he's so tiny, he's a bad baby.
Bad baby. Oh, it's crazy!
I think this was a little overhyped. There is a little monitor that you're able to look at while you're pressing the buttons to fix the ship. But when you press the button to check on Grogu, most of the time all Grogu's doing is probably does a little dance, maybe he gets close to the screen, and yeah, he's really not doing a whole lot. If anything, I don't really care about seeing Grogu, and that hurts to say because Grogu's cool, but I'd rather just focus on the ride in front of me rather than just this tiny little screen. The only time where I'm actually going to want to focus on that little screen is the best part of being the engineer. It's only one engineer who gets to do this, but if you're lucky, you get to choose the flight path for the entire crew. I think that is way better than just having some random mission like Star Tours where you don't know where you're gonna go next. You get to choose for everyone where you get to go. So if your flight crew isn't exactly all that nice, you get to choose Bespin, and if they're cool, you get to choose Coruscant. Or, no, I'm just kidding. No, overall, no matter the mission or position, this is a really good update. If I really have to say anything negative about the ride, I'd say it feels a little more video gamey than before. Like, I noticed when the engineer sets the coordinates for their next planet, there's some random ships that just blip out of existence. It's more funny than anything, it just goes boop. But also, at the end of the mission, there's this really abrupt cut back to Batu, and then the Star Wars theme's just playing. It's a little random. You're like going to the planet, going through the clouds, and it just...
Mission complete. Yes, you can say hi to your new friends.
There's no real transition, it just happens. It's really weird. A little too abrupt for me, I guess. It sounds like very little nitpicks, and yeah, they are little nitpicks. Overall, the ride's definitely an improvement. And in fact, this update definitely gives us a fascinating insight on the ride's future. Seeing it be reprogrammed in such a short amount of time, like One day it was Corellia, and the next day it's Mandalorian. I think that's pretty interesting. It reminds me of switching from Space Mountain to Hyperspace Mountain, or soaring over California to soaring around the world. That's pretty cool. They just easily switch Falcon missions just whenever they want. I think once, maybe if guests for some reason get a little bored of these same Mandalorian missions, we can switch over to Corellia. Of course, put the Mandalorian in there, give us those better controls that we have for Corellia as well. I say that because it'd be a shame to lose that mission forever. But this way, it keeps the ride fresh every single year for us. And in the future, you can maybe update the attraction to feature Han Solo and Chewbacca, perhaps even some cameos from Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa for planets of the original trilogy. Or, I don't know how it would work with the prequel trilogy, but that would be cool getting to see planets from that era as well. But at the end of the day, I think this was a very important update, because this gives the ride more potential to last in Disneyland. Lands in this park are meant to stay for decades. Frontierland, Adventureland, Tomorrowland, Mickey's Toontown, New Orleans Square, and now Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. This land and Millennium Falcon Smugglers Run are meant to stay for a very long time. And having a ride that's able to update to so many different missions, it'll make this ride age way better for decades. Almost in the same way I think Haunted Mansion has aged so well, or Pirates of the Caribbean, Big Thunder Mountain, Indiana Jones, even Rise of the Resistance. So hopefully this update will age just as good as these rides. And plus, the Millennium Falcon is one of the most iconic things about the most iconic franchises to exist. So it already has the chance to remain timeless for decades, assuming that this ride's able to keep up with the technology as it improves every single year. Because I would hate for this ride to look pretty dated in 20 years. That'd be a shame. This ride is definitely a step up from what we had before. The queue and the facade is still amazing. It's perfection, and the ride positions and the planets we go to are definitely an improvement, some smaller than others. And its potential for future updates give this ride a timeless future, which is sure to entertain park fans and fans of Star Wars for generations to come.
Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Not you, Hondo. The kid.